Mananacizus, Imina 35 na legislature in Guam is called to order. At this time, I would ask that Senator Mary Torres kindly lead us in prayer.
Ginaa ni Tata, Ilahinya, Deni Espiritu Santo. Amen. I offer this prayer for all our government and civic leaders, law enforcement officials, and citizens across our great nation who are exercising peaceful protest on the streets or in the sanctity of their hearts against the injustice of bigotry and abuse of our fellow man. Show us the way, dear Lord, during these troubled times, that peace and civility may be restored throughout the land. For it is, as it is written in Psalm 119, your justice is eternal and your instructions are perfectly true. We pray also Santa Maria Carmelin, protector of our island, please continue to watch over us. Si Zeus Inguinegu Maria Bula Gracia, si Zeus Gagigita Hagu. Matuna entre todos y famalawan za matuna ifinanagumo as Jesus. Santa Maria nananzuus, tazuzuti hamni manisaw, pagod za ni ora ni fanatay mami. Amen. Ginaa ni Tata, Ilahinya, za ni Espiritu Santo. Amen.
Si Senator Mary Torres, for the recognition of a recipient of Imiladsan Mastakluna Sacrificium, Senator Regine Biscoli, you are recognized at this time.
Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on behalf of a grateful island and country, we honor Native Seaman Second Class, World War II, Pedro Palomo Mendiola, and the family of Native Seaman Second Class Pedro Palomo Mendiola for making the ultimate sacrifice in service and defense of our island and country.
Senator Lee, and for the recitation of the Inafresi, again, Senator Regine Biscoli, kindly lead us.
Inafresi, gininimastakulu ginosoku, imastakulum gikurasonhu, zanimasfigu naninasinyahu, huufresin maisadzu, karabai patehi, zanu defendi, ihinengi, ikutura, ilingwahi, iairi, ihanum, zanitanu tamoru. Niren shakudiretu ginanazuas tata, estiu fitma, gihilui biblia, zanibanderahu ibanderan wahan.
For the singing of the Guam hymn and the national anthem, would our gentlemen members kindly lead us in singing both? Masi. Kindly be seated. Manana si Jesus, Madam Clerk, Haji Mangagi, Gwini, put for vote. Roll call.
Senator Castro, Senator Lee, Senator Marsh Titano, Senator Moylan, Senator Munya, Speaker Munya Barnes,
Manana si Jesus, Kagya.
Vice Speaker Nelson, Senator Perez, Senator Ragel, Senator San Augustine, Senator Shelton, Senator Taitagui,
Here.
Senator Pito Terlahi, Senator Therese Terlahi, Senator Torres. Madam Speaker, there is a quorum.
Si Jesus Masi, Madam Clerk. And at this time, Majority Leader, Vice Speaker Nelson, you are recognized.
Manana Situs, Madam Speaker. I move to approve the Legislative Journal dated May 21st, 2020, subject to corrections.
On the motion to approve the Legislative Journal dated May 21st, 2020, are there any objections? If there are no objections, motion carries. Majority Leader, Vice Speaker Nelson, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, there are communications and petitions, and I move that they be appended to today's session journal.
On the motion that communications and petitions be amended to today's session journal, are there any objections? Hearing or seeing no objections, motion carries. Majority Leader, Vice Speaker Nelson, you are recognized.
Situs Masi, Madam Speaker, there are reports of standing committees, and I move that they be appended to today's session journal.
On the motion that messages from Imagahagan Guahan be appended to today's session journal, are there any objections? Hearing or seeing none, motion carries. Majority Leader, Vice Speaker Nelson, you are still recognized.
Madam Speaker, there are no reports of select committees.
On the motion, Clerk?
Proceed.
Majority Leader, on the motion to, that reports of standing committees.
Say again.
On the motion to report that they are standing committees be appended to today's journal?
There are no reports of select committees.
There are
There are.
reports, committee reports of standing committees, Madam Majority Leader.
On the motion to submit committee reports for standing committees, Madam Speaker.
On the motion that reports of standing committees be appended to today's session journal, are there any objections? Hearing or seeing none, motion carries. Majority Leader, Vice Speaker Nelson, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, I move that resolutions introduced, resolution numbers 327-35 COR and 328-35 COR be deemed to have been given their first reading.
On the motion, are there any objections? Hearing or seeing none, motion carries. Clerk.
Where is the session agenda?
Majority Leader, Vice Speaker Nelson, you're still recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that all congratulatory, commendatory, and condolence resolutions introduced today and for the remainder of this legislative session be considered first read and adopted to allow the Legislative Council to make technical corrections and to add all senators as co-sponsors.
On that motion, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, no objections, motion carries. Colleagues, we are now in motions. Are there any motions right now? Senator Therese Terlaje, I will recognize you.
Madam Speaker, I would like to move that the appointment of Dana Gutierrez as judge of the Superior Court of Guam be placed on legislative concurrence. It's been reported out of the committee with a recommendation to do confirm.
Senator Lee, do you have a point of information?
I do, Madam Speaker. Just a point of information. The Committee on Rules has submitted this report for Dana A. Gutierrez this morning. So I'm not sure if it's up online yet, but we typically request that it be up online for 24 hours before moving anything on the floor. So I just want to point that out as a point of information for my colleagues.
It's
Thank you.
online, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Torres, do you have a point of information?
No, Madam Speaker, I have another motion. I'm sorry.
Okay. There has been a motion, colleagues, from Senator Therese Terlaje. On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing or seeing none, motion carries. Any other motions? Senator Kelly Tachino, you are recognized.
Sejuis Masi, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to place from the Committee on Heritage and the Arts, Parks, Guam Products, Hagåtña Revitalization, Self-Determination, and Regional Affairs, the appointment of U.M. Dreama Asor to serve as a member of the Department of Parks and Recreation Commission on the session agenda.
Senator Lee, I will acknowledge you again on a point of information.
Sejuis Masi, Madam Speaker. Again, this nomination was processed and cleared by the Committee on Rules just this morning. It was sent to the clerks and has not been online for 24 hours, which is usually our practice. So again, I just want to note for the record that that is the case. One of the reasons why this has been our practice to do that is to just make sure that the public has an opportunity to review all of these nominations. So again, I just leave it up to the body and leave that as a point of information. These nominations have not been up for 24 hours.
Thank you, Senator Lee. On that motion by Senator Kelly Marsh Taichano, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Senator Torres, do you have an objection to that? Motion carries. Before I acknowledge Senator Torres, I will acknowledge Senator Taichano again. Do you have another motion?
Sejuis Masi, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to place from the Committee on Heritage and the Arts, Parks, Guam Products, Hagåtña Revitalization, Self-Determination, and Regional Affairs, the appointment of Rolando C. Zepeda to serve as the member, Visual Arts, of the Guam Council on the Arts and Humanities Board of Directors on the session agenda.
On that motion, again, Senator Lee, on a point of information.
Just the same point of information, Madam Speaker. This committee report was filed and it had only this morning been given to the clerks and been placed online.
Thank you. On that motion, from Senator San Augustine, do you have a point of information or an objection?
No, but Madam Speaker, there are many nominations, reports that are still processing through. And I believe that if we just continue on with our agenda and then come back to motion to reload them once they meet the fulfillment, that would be in the best interest. So I do object to any further adds on until such time is clear to court then, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator San Augustine. There has been an objection. All those in favor of Senator Titano's motion to place Rolando Zepeda onto legislative concurrence, please raise your hands. Motion carries. Thank you. Anybody else? Senator Mary Torres, I will recognize you at this time.
Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill number 162-35, COR, as substituted by the Committee on Health, Tourism, Historic Preservation, Land, and Justice into the second reading file.
Madam Senator, could you please kindly read the title so that we know, the body knows what it is?
Yes. This is an act to add a new subsection B5 to section 4303 and a new section E to section 4305 and to amend section 4308 of Article 3, Chapter 4, Title 19, Guam Code Annotated. This is relative to terminating the parent-child relationship of a parent who is found by clear and convincing evidence to have committed the offense of criminal sexual conduct against the other parent, resulting in the conception of a child. In short, terminating the parental rights of rapists. And the committee report has been filed, Madam Speaker, and I believe is in the process of being uploaded if it is not already uploaded on our website.
Thank you, Senator Torres, but at the request of the clerk, I'm going to take just a moment's recess so that they can look for that on their phones. Moment's recess. Y minuto 35 en la legislatura en Guam is back from recess. Senator Torres, I will acknowledge you at this time.
Madam Speaker, I was just made aware that it has not yet been uploaded, so in consideration to the rest of my colleagues, I will withdraw my motion to place Bill 162 and entertain that motion at another time when the bill and committee report has in fact been uploaded. So I withdraw that respectfully. Thank you.
Si Zeus Masi, Senator Torres on that motion to withdraw without any objections. Motion carries. Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano on the motion, please, for Robert Taitano.
Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker. I move to place Bill, sorry, trying to get my digital material all together. I move to place Bill number 241-35 COR.
No. Senator Taitano, if I may first, I do apologize. We're in legislative concurrences, and if you can do on my behalf as my vice chair, the motion to place on the voting file Robert Taitano from the Committee of Public Accountability. Did she?
Kunkin, sorry. Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker. I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Public Accountability, Human Resources, and the Guam Buildup the nomination of Robert C. Taitano to serve as a member of the Civil Service Commission with the recommendation to do confirm.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Si Zeus Masi, Senator Taitano. At this time, I will go ahead and acknowledge Senator Therese Terlahi on the motion, on her motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move that the appointment of Dana Gutierrez as judge of the Superior Court of Guam be placed in the voting file for today.
Thank you. On that motion, on Senator Therese Terlahi's motion, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano, you are recognized.
Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker. I move to place into the voting file. Excuse me. I move to place into the voting file the nomination of U.M. Drema Asor to serve as a member of the Department of Parks and Recreation Commission with the recommendation to do confirm.
On that motion, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Senator Taitano, I will still recognize you.
Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker. I move to place in the voting file the nomination of Rolando C. Cepeda to serve as a member, Visual Arts, of the Guam Council on the Arts and Humanities Board of Directors with the recommendation to do confirm.
On that motion, are there any objections? Seeing none, motion carries. Si Zeus Masi, Senator Taitano. Colleagues, we are now on Bill number 241-35 COR, and at this time I will recognize Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano.
Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker. I move to place Bill number 241, and let me get up all of its information. I I move to place Bill number 241-35, COR, as amended by the Committee on the Heritage and the Arts, Parks, Guam Products, Hagåtña Revitalization, Self-Determination, and Regional Affairs, authored by myself, Senators Jose Pito Terlahi, Speaker Tina Rose Muñoz Barnes, Vice Speaker Talina Cruz Nelson, and Senator Clinton E. Rigel. It is an act to add a new section 72110 to Chapter 72, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, relative to creating and implementing a rip current and hiking safety awareness program and outreach plan. I would like to place this into the third reading file, and I would like to discuss it.
Senator Tachner, please proceed.
Bill 241, introduced by myself and several co-sponsors who have oversight over safety and other agencies that are related. It develops a rip current and hiking safety program and ensures that our people are armed with information that can save our lives and the lives of those we love and care about. Guam is a beautiful and special place with a lot of natural and cultural sites to love and experience firsthand. However, every year we lose too many of our loved ones and visitors to rip current and hiking conditions. Bill 241 works to reverse that trend. Just recently, we experienced near constant warnings of dangerous rip current conditions, and some weekends were replete with stories of near drownings and various types of swimming and hiking rescues. In the last several years alone, we have had high numbers of tragic incidents, people being pulled out by rip currents, some never to return, hikers having died in our caves and jungles or from flash floods. Numerous hikers have gotten seriously injured or have been lost for hours or days, while numerous others have contracted leptospirosis, a bacterial zoonotic disease owing to carabao, deer, or pig urine in our soil and water. Many of our youth, new community members, and visitors simply don't know the dangers they might face, how to avoid them, or what to do if they encounter them. Bill 241 tasked the Department of Parks and Recreation to spearhead a public awareness program, along with specialists from other entities such as the Fire Department, Guam Homeland Security, the Department of Agriculture's Forestry and Soil Division, and our Coastal Management Program, who have each provided support of this bill. Commitments to this working group have also been provided by the U.S. National Coast Guard, as well as the Rear Admiral, who volunteered his Joint Region Marianas Safety Officer, and from the National Weather Service Station. As mandated by this legislation, DPR will organize the creation of an outreach plan consisting of identifying hazardous beaches, rivers, and waterfalls, and hiking hazards, as well as the dangerous conditions they each entail. Creating safety guidelines for signage at all major hiking trailheads and beaches with strong rip currents, identifying programs that fund such safety initiatives, and recommending means to create awareness, avoidance, and mitigation of such issues, like we've seen created for the Tsunami Preparedness Program, is something that our community can greatly benefit from. All our children need to know how to wave, yell, and swim parallel, among other strategies that help them survive the pull of a rip current. Our community and visitors need to know the conditions of a hike and how to prepare for traversing it safely. Another example of mitigating or improving hiking conditions has been carried out in Hawaii, where unstable hiking trails have been strengthened through the planting of appropriate vegetation. We have major erosion issues on Guam. However, we also have proactive planting programs that have and can continue to make a real difference in making hiking trails safer. I've certainly seen the difference in planting trees near Kanu'un, otherwise known as Tarzan Falls, in making the trail more secure, stable, and safer to hike. Our community and visitors alike need and deserve to be better informed and protected so as to prevent as many incidents as possible and save as many lives as possible. Some signage regarding rip currents has occurred from time to time, but as Chip Guard, formerly with the National Weather Service Guam, noted when I met with him, that signage at this point, it's inconsistent and the signs tend to fall into disrepair with nothing to ensure that the signage will stay current and in good repair. It has to be recognized that while perhaps more and more of us in the community are spending time hiking, there has really never been safety signage at major trailheads or awareness programs about that. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We need to invest in prevention, not only to save lives because every life is precious, but also to minimize the necessity of costly search and rescue efforts that can last for days. We've lost too many of our community and too many visitors to these dangers. They need and deserve a robust awareness and safety program that is consistent, that is permanent, and regularly updated, and that is not left to the winds of chance of one administration, one grant, or a director or a program coordinator that may come and go. We must do what we can to keep our people and visitors safe. Now is the time for this legislature to act, especially as our beaches and parks are now open and we are trying to restart tourism. As the use of our beaches and trails increase, so must our efforts to keep everyone safe and prevent future tragedies. I therefore ask for my fellow senators' support for safeguarding our community and visitors. Sijus Masi.
Thank you, Senator Taitzino. Anyone wishing to speak on the motion? Minority Leader, you will recognize on the motion.
Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on Bill 241-35 Core as amended in the committee. Madam Speaker, you know, when I first saw this, I thought, okay, during the time Parks and Rec was dealing with a lot of issues that they have, a lot of them is funding. But when you come in agencies that have a lot of funding, you also have the ability for employees to take away from what their two jobs that they're doing at the agency when they're really overwhelmed at that point to be able to protect our parks, you know, and the job that they do is just enormous. I know there was an issue with the previous director regarding the funding on this. However, Madam Chair, if you look at the legislation here we are legislating by law, requiring them to put together what they already do at Parks and Rec. They have programs there that address certain issues with public safety, swimming areas, hiking. For us to mandate them to do so, I think it's just a little overboard here, especially if you don't know the climate of what's really happening in an agency, in a department, to be able to do all these things that it's required in this bill. So, Madam Speaker, I do have a couple amendments here, you know, but let me finish first. So, Madam Speaker, then you go further down on all these requirements. So it sounds to me like you're going to need somebody pretty much full-time to be able to do all these things and stuff that they already do. You know, it's one thing that, you know, to create legislation that would provide laws that would actually really put teeth to it and help individuals from, you know, any kind of concerns in the public that would actually harm somebody. But this here, Madam Speaker, is something that Parks and Rec already does. And if they can't do it, what are they going to do? So in the legislation, it says that, okay, Parks and Rec, I know you're having a difficult time, so we shall have you Department of the Fire Department, and shall have the Department of Agriculture, and shall have the Guam Visitors Bureau and Bureau of Statistics and Plans to assist you and support you. With that language, that means Parks and Rec can go up to the fire department and say, okay, I want you guys to order me 23 signs, and I want you guys to put it up. Guam Visitors Bureau, I want you to put out all the literature, you know, and I want you to pass it out on the side of, I mean, when you have the word shall in there, then these individuals have to do it. It's by law. We see the issues that are happening at Parks and Rec right now. I mean, even the swimming pool scenario, can't even get that going. There's not enough individuals where the parks are to assist with the bathrooms, the issues with the bathrooms being raided and vandalized. And now we're going to have Parks and Rec shall create this program, which some of the stuff they already do already, but now you're mandating an agency to do this. So, Madam Speaker, my amendment is very simple, and I think if they had the ability and the extra resources to do it, then great, that's great. But you know, we are in a crisis right now, especially for funding. Especially for funding. So, even though I do know the intent of this legislation is admirable, and it's, you know, addressing some concerns that are out there, and granted, yes, we've had people who are going out there who've drowned in areas that if there was a sign there, maybe they would have taken caution, or maybe not. But Madam Speaker, my amendment is very simple. I have it already prepared, but it's so simple, I don't think we have to change anything other than just striking out, or shall, on line 1, page 1, line 6, and put may instead of shall, may, and the same thing happens on page 3, line 13, taking out shall and put may.
I'll take that as two different amendments to save a tree right now. On the first amendment, to change the word shall to may. Are there any objections? Would you like to speak on the amendment? Senator Taitano, you are recognized, and then Senator Lee.
Sejos Masi, Madam Speaker. Yes, I would like to speak on the amendment, and I actually had an amendment in the works to do the same thing. So with the Department of Parks and Recreation, we do have a new director who has over 25 years of experience, and we are strengthening its staffing through various means. It currently does not have a program, and it has no oversight of a specific program such as this, which is why we don't have signs that are hiking trails and so forth. And why the signage for the rip currents, it's been worked on by various groups together, including DPR and GVB and the National Weather Station, but there is no specific structure. And it's certainly, we've seen too many important issues, important programs fall through the cracks, not because there aren't good intentions, not because it's not needed, but because there isn't structure for it. And so we absolutely need structure for this. DPR will just head up and organize, and so to get to the amendment, they are meant to head up and organize, but also be informed by these entities. And each of these entities has committed, some in letter form and some orally. But I do agree that it makes sense to give them a little bit of flexibility in getting together to share their expertise and be part of the solution. So I do support changing the shall to may. And as I mentioned, I just see value in making sure that the structure is there so that when budget comes around, when oversight comes around, we can make sure that we are holding them accountable for a program that serves our community.
Thank you, Senator Tyson. Senator Lee, I will recognize you on the amendment.
Well, first off, Madam Speaker, I wanted to just make a point of order. It's my understanding that we were to submit all of our amendments into the clerk so we can all be able to view it.
Yes.
What part? I know it's a simple amendment, but we all want to make sure that we're exactly on the same page and we're aware of, especially as we roll down with additional amendments.
Senator Lee, if I may,
I'm certain.
I was just going to do that and acknowledge to the body that I did send out a message asking that all the our colleagues submit any amendments that they have to bill in writing. The clerk has just apprised me that in order for us to work more efficiently and smoothly, that it is important that all the amendments get submitted to the clerk so that it could be uploaded and worked with. And based on the notice that I sent out earlier, if your amendment is not in writing, that, you know, we were going to forego it unless it's uploaded. Again, my colleagues, I have to note that it is at the request of the clerk and legal and all the stakeholders up here who make this, our session run more smoothly and more efficiently, that it has been requested that we work closely with them. So with that being said, I will yield back to you, Senator Lee, based on that, because we did give that opportunity for all our colleagues to know about all the amendments that were to be submitted. So, Senator Lee, I will give you back the floor at this time.
So just Masi, Speaker, I'm really just trying to wrap my mind around just the timing of all this. I appreciate the bill. I think that it is necessary. We have had deaths on our island. We had issues regarding safety that have affected not just our tourists, but our local community as well. We lose lives. There are many people that unfortunately lose their lives in our hiking around our island, but also in our waters. And so I think that just for that reason alone, this bill is important. But, you know, this is the very first bill on our agenda that we're discussing. We're still in a state of emergency. We still have this pandemic upon us. We still are, you know, in budget season. So just the idea of this amendment to water down this bill at this time, it makes it really difficult for me. And I'm hoping that maybe the proffer of this amendment can please explain to me what we're doing here. If this bill is so important and we put it on our agenda, then why are we making attempts now to water it down and to go from a shall that we are going to have a coordinated effort by all of the agencies of our island that are responsible for keeping our people safe, from going forward and saying this is a priority and creating a plan, which the retiring speaker just said we don't have a plan. But you know what? Don't worry about it. You don't have to do it. Just do it when you have time. That's essentially what this amendment is saying. Instead of it, you shall do it. We think that life is important. We think that, you know, search and rescue teams should be able to comment on this, that we think that, you know, our hikers and the people who want to enjoy our parks, our beaches, our, you know, hiking trails on Guam, we want to make sure that they're safe. We want to make sure that they're informed, that they're educated, that they're aware of the precautions to take when we're out there. I'm just confused, Madam Speaker. This is the very first bill on our agenda. This is the first thing that we're discussing in the middle of this public health emergency, and the first step is to water it down. So if somebody could please explain that to me, Madam Speaker, that's my question. I'm really having trouble wrapping my mind around why we would want to take a step back and why we would want to water it down by changing it from shall to may.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Minority Leader, would you like to yield to that, or would you like to yield to Senator Clint? The question, there was an inquiry.
Yeah, I know, Amanda. I'm just trying to wrap my head around there, wondering if I'm the one that should be answering that question, since I didn't introduce this legislation during this time of crisis to be put on.
Madam.
So, Madam Speaker, if you allow me to speak.
Minority Leader, I'm going to ask
you. You asked me a question if I wanted to answer it, and I will try and do my best on my end. But I think that the good author of this legislation
stick to the question
should
and not
also
assume.
do. Madam Speaker, I'm trying to explain something. If you let me
Minority
speak.
Leader, I'm going to ask you again with all due respect.
I am trying to answer your question,
Do
Madam
not,
Speaker,
do
and
not
what I'm going
talk
to
about
say.
any other colleague, but about the merits of the bill, please. So you will proceed right now. Would you like to answer the question at this time? Minority Leader.
Let me see. I will yield to the author of the bill. How's that?
Senator Taitano, would you like to yield to the inquiry of Senator Lee?
Again, it's with pleasure that I yield.
Thank you,
More
Senator
information
Taitano.
and more debate is healthy and robust for all legislation. So I think that these are important points that were raised, and I thank my colleague for the question. There are many important issues here. This legislation began something like May or August of last year. And during this time, we're especially of heightened awareness that every life is really valuable, and we're on edge a little bit about losing anybody. We're coming into wet season. Wet season is when we're going to have an increase in flash floods, which means an increase potentially of leptospirosis, a very debilitating issue that can cause the liver to shut down. It can cause severe damage and severe reactions. And during this, and it also causes the wet season erosion, which makes our hiking trails even less stable. So in that sense, and the fact that we're going to be having this public health crisis for perhaps a year and a half or 2 years, it is important that we are still working towards these larger issues, which is saving the lives of our young ones who are out there hiking, the rest of us who are out there, and our visitors. With this public health emergency, we are seeing perhaps more and more people out there using our beaches and using the hiking trails. So that's addressing the timing of it. And I do want to mention with the question about changing shall to may, I was considering some flexibility just to make sure that we're giving this program the best shot as possible. But the proffer of the question made a very good point. Each one of them has given me commitment in letter or in orally, and they each considered it extremely important for our community. So I do see the value of staying with shall, and I appreciate the question being asked.
Senator Taitano. Senator Lee, you still have the floor. Does that help?
Yes, it does, Madam Speaker, and with that, I just object to this amendment.
Thank you. Anyone else? Senator Clint on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, I also object to the amendment. I think I agree that we should keep it at shall. I think here the issue here is that, quite frankly, the Department of Parks and Recreation should have a public safety awareness program. It only makes sense. Quite frankly, I'm surprised that after many years of existence, they do not have a public safety awareness program. So I think they absolutely should be mandated to create a public safety awareness program so that we can let the public be aware of some of the safety issues that are out there. We've had individuals pass away recently. A gentleman very tragically fell to his death at the Talafofo Caves. That was not that long ago. I live nearby, and I've been to those caves, and I've seen those caves, and it's extremely dangerous. And I've thought to myself before, why aren't there any signs here saying watch out for the steep drop? The only reason I knew it was such a dangerous cave is I stopped the hikers who were with me and said, hang on, this looks like it's very steep. I threw a rock down it and listened for it. And like 10 hours later, it wasn't really 10 hours later, but a long time later, the rock hits the floor, and I think, this is dangerous. Someone can die here. There's no sign saying, do not approach this edge. And there's no way to tell. It's pitch black. So we absolutely need a public safety awareness program out there, especially in light of the fact that more and more people are hiking than ever before. I remember when I was growing up as a kid, hiking, and even as a young adult, hiking wasn't that popular. I didn't know that many people that hiked. There were a few clubs, the Guam Boonie Stompers, and that's about it. We've seen hiking explode now, and I think now more than ever it's important that we do require that a public safety awareness program is created. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Rigel. On the amendment, anyone else wish to speak? If not, Minority Leader, you can close. Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Terlahi, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, I have no objection to considering the amendment at this point. I think, the bill, of course, has a great intention. It's directing the Department of Parks and Rec to do something that I'm sure many of us are wondering why they aren't doing it anyways. And so I tried to see, what would be the impact. So we're trying to, the amendment is whether to change shall to may, I think, or something else to just make it more optional for the other agencies that are going to be involved. And I think, it's fair to say that all of these agencies listed, they are involved. They all have their own safety programs, how they're going to rescue people programs. That's what they've been doing all these years. It's been part of their job. And so we want to direct the Department of Parks and Rec to do it. It's great. I just, feel like the director, I think he's coming down for a confirmation hearing. If I'm not mistaken, we should ensure that that is one of his priorities. I know that when that high school boy, tragically drowned, and it shook up the entire island. And so if it's because they're not aware and we can help to save a life, I'm all for it, Madam Speaker. I'm also I like to hike, so I've seen this, and it is very scary when the rains are coming and the rivers they flood so fast. However, and I want to give a lot of kudos to the firefighters, our National Guard, everyone who helps in rescue, who search missions, the military here in Guam, for helping us in these emergencies, Madam Speaker. But back to the bill, I just, if I also may, after that tragedy, the reason I brought that up is because after that, Dave Lotz formed a group, called I think it's called the Guam Hiking Safety Group, where he also tries to put out advice from all his many, many years of leading the Guam Boonie Stompers and making the hiking trail guidebooks. And so he puts out his safety announcements and guides and tips on this Facebook page called Guam Hiking Safety. So I wanted to also put a shout out to him. And for those who are listening, it's got some very good advice, and especially hooked to, in particular, his experience with the particular trails that we are actually going on. But back to the bill, Madam Speaker, it is not very clear because the fiscal note itself says that there is no fiscal impact, meaning we're not dedicating any additional resources towards any of this. It says the Bureau anticipates the costs associated with administering the plan to be absorbed by the operating budget of the DPR. However, absent additional information from the department as well as the plan not being established to date, the Bureau is unable to determine an appropriate fiscal impact at this time. And then on another part, it talks about DPR shall be responsible, according to this bill, for the plan, working on that actual plan, and also creating pamphlets, brochures, posters, advertisements in mass media, and any other appropriate media to holster general public awareness. So I just think it's reasonable that if we're not, dedicating anything in particular to Parks and Rec, and that they are going to do this within their own budget, and we are not dedicating to those other agencies, and they actually already do this through their own budgets. Very much so. I think the Guam Visitors Bureau has set aside large parts of its budget for visitor safety. And that's exactly what they do. They patrol the beaches, and they try to inform tourists. We currently have lifeguards at the beaches also, trying to inform the tourists regarding rip currents, things like that. And and of course the fire department with their safety, they're really the foremost, water, especially water safety personnel here on Guam. And so I just don't, at least for me, I feel like they are very much doing their job. I am very aware when I'm anywhere out that they are there, and that they have been the ones over all of my years of experience to be out there, doing rescue and making sure that people are safe. And so I just wanted to thank them for that also, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Chalahi. Anyone else on the amendment? Senator Taitino, you spoke. Did she speak on?
I have a point of information.
Go ahead and state your point of information then, Senator Taitino.
Situas Masi, so there were several assertions made, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness of all my colleagues. And so I just wanted to clarify that this bill is about prevention. It's not about the rescue programs that are in place. And both the Guam Fire Department, they wanted this to exist with Department of Parks and Recreation. They felt that was the most appropriate place, and are supporting this bill, as has GVB. They wrote a letter of support and are committing somebody to be part of this. So as I mentioned earlier, there are these occasional things that happen, but without a program, they're kind of hit and miss. They come and go, and they're not consistent. And that was what Chip Guard had mentioned at the National Weather Service.
Madam Speaker, point of information. This is not information. She's speaking again on it.
Senator Taitagui, please. You can finish, Senator Taitino.
Situas Masi. So regarding the funding, just to clarify that, the Tsunami Awareness Program is fully federally funded, to my understanding. So it's asking this group to look for that sort of federal funding, so that it is something that can be upheld in that sort of way. So I just wanted to clarify those because they really came out as questions in a sense. And so I wanted to provide those sorts of clarifications.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Tatano. Anyone else on the amendment? If not, Minority Leader, you may close.
Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you know, the intent of this legislation, there's no question or doubt that anything that's preventive or anything that we can assist in the public safety of our community is always supported, and I think supported by everybody in this legislature. There's no question on that. You know, why is this bill on the session agenda? Because it's an emergency? Well, I don't think there's anything wrong. Today is June 1st. This is where all government of Guam agencies open up and we start kind of getting into the norm. And one of them is legislation such as this. My amendment, Madam Speaker, is just clearly not, I mean, we know that the author of the bill is the oversight chair of this department. But it's important to realize the funding that's needed to implement any kind of program in any department or agencies takes away the time and efforts from other employees that are doing 3 jobs already. So we got to be very careful about that. If they have time to do it, they can do it. But to mandate by law, stop what you're doing, you have to do this right away. And for my colleague to say that there are no safety plans or programs at the Department of Parks and Rec is wrong. They have programs there. And like the previous speaker said, some of them are federally funded. Even better yet, we have people in the community who step up and volunteer. Everybody remember the hashers. They're a group of running people who go out and they go through the trails and they provide information to Parks and Rec on certain places that if they see it's a danger, these guys do it voluntarily. And that's great. We have great community here. But what we don't have is funding. And we definitely can't take away from those who are working at Parks and Rec right now. So my amendment is simply, Madam Speaker, the amendment is take away shall and put may. The author agreed at the beginning that that was her intent to change it from shall to may. So all of a sudden now it's changed because somebody thought this was not very important. It is important, Madam Speaker. I mean, it is. Anything for public safety is. But this just gives a flexibility, and I say flexibility in a quote because it was used earlier, flexibility for the department. And that's what this amendment simply does, Madam Speaker. And I humbly ask my colleagues to consider all what's happening today in our circumstances and the financial crisis that we are going to be in today, to consider that, to allow that flexibility, quote, for that department, Parks and Rec, who has so many problems right now. Bathrooms, pools, littering in our parks. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minority Leader. On that motion, there was an objection. All those in favor of the Tattagui amendment, please signify by raising your hand. 3. Motion fails. I did say I was going to fabricate that, so you do have the other one on page 3.
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Senator Tattagui.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity. On page 3, line 13. Madam Speaker, I did speak with, I received a text from the Department of, the Fire Department. I didn't have a chance to talk to Agriculture or Guam Visitors Bureau, but they have an issue too with shall.
and the funding. They just, I mean, let alone Parks and Rec already mentioned to the good author of this bill that they have an issue with the funding source. Now we have these agencies who will now have to come forward. Now, after receiving a text from Chief Stone, they don't support it, that section on having to fund this program, and that they did speak with the author and was told that there was going to be a change in that section. So my amendment is to change from shall to may on page 3, line 13. And I'm pretty sure the Department of Agriculture, as well as the Guam Visitors Bureau and Bureau of Statistics and Plans, well, especially the Guam Visitors Bureau, considering the TAF, their funding sources are really depleting. This would be a good amendment.
Thank you, Minority Leader. On that amendment, Senator Lee, you are recognized.
Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker. I might just be having trouble, but I'm on the June 1st session in the folder, and I don't see these amendments. And this is something that I raised with the last amendment, so I'm just raising it again.
Thank you, Senator Lee. I will share with you that this amendment is on FAB 241. TT, line 13, page 3. It is submitted and it's online. Yeah, does everybody have a copy of that? It's uploaded already.
Madam Speaker, if I could just request a moment's recess while the clerk assists us.
Yes, I will. A moment's recess. The problem is on the amendment, it says page 6, page 1, line 6, but it's the same one. She just takes out the Guam Coastal Management may. Page 3. Page 3, line 13. Go ahead. Imina 85 ng legislature in Guam is back from recess. Before we left for recess, Senator Lee, you still have the floor. I will recognize you.
Sujos Masi, Madam Speaker. Just wanted to, in the context of this amendment and the comments that were made by the proffer of this amendment, I did want to direct some questions to the author of the bill. So the proffer of this amendment was stating that, or there was a statement made about text messages being received from the chief of GFD, and Madam Speaker, it's news to me that text messages from government officials can be entered into the record. I mean, typically we have to make a motion to add those things to committee reports and add them to formal testimony. But my question to the author of the bill is, I was reviewing the committee report for this over the weekend, and it did come to my attention that there was testimony missing from the Guam Fire Department. And it struck me because it's specifically GFD, GFD Rescue, which is the agency that is primarily responsible for land and ocean search and rescue here on Guam. And the author had mentioned in her opening remarks on the bill that GFD was supportive, but none of this is included in the committee report, Madam Speaker. So I just would like to ask the author if she could clarify for all of us. And again, this is in relation to the remarks that were made by the proffer of this amendment. So I'm just trying to make sure that we are on the same sheet of music, but also, operating within the kind of the process, our legislative process, and taking what has been submitted officially, and we're all working with the same information.
Sujos Masi, Senator Lee. On the question, Senator Taitano, would you like to yield?
Sujos Masi, Madam Chair. And I thank my colleague for the question and the ability to provide some clarity. So we had worked on this bill for many months, and I appreciate that the Guam Fire Department, that the chief had committed the battalion chief to be working with my office. So I had been working with both the Guam Fire Department, who had actually recommended that Department of Parks and Recreation was the best place for this, according to their assessment, and then had been working with different aspects of the bill, even committing to doing a radio show with us and coming into our office and sitting down with our policy advisor and so forth. It is true that with that, kind of working side by side, I had not gotten a letter, but we had a fairly close working relationship. And so I did reach out to the fire chief when it was brought to my attention that the actual written testimony wasn't there. And he reaffirmed this morning that he will write that testimony and get it to us at his earliest convenience today. So by the end of the day, he is going to have the written testimony to support his months of commitment and his statements of support to the bill with the office.
Thank you, Senator Tano. Senator Lee, you still have the floor. Does that help? Thank you. Anyone else on the Title Amendment? If not, are there any objections? Are there any objections? There is an objection. All those in, then I do apologize. Minority Leader, you have the opportunity to close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's important sometimes when bills that are heard at public hearing and they go into committee, and then when they come out of committee, there's been changes that are being made. And sometimes these changes are done without the knowledge of some departments and agencies. So when somebody sees it, especially some like me, I see a big change, I want to hear the opinions of that agency or that director, how they feel about that particular change. And, it's surprising because I was even showing, and when that happens, sometimes they text you. And when they text you and tell you something, you can't like quickly, okay, write it in, you've got 5 more minutes before we start the bill, or whatever the circumstances may be. But hearing from that department and agency is very important, whether it's done, in smoke signals or texts, it doesn't matter. You're hearing what they have to say. And this text to me told me from the chief of police that he texted the author of the bill and told her could not support the funding on this. And then I was wondering about Department of Agriculture. I didn't have a chance to text them, to find out how do they feel about this, because I'm looking at one of my colleagues was saying that fire was not in here testifying. Trying to look if Department of Agriculture was in here and testifying, because her name is on it too. But Madam Speaker, funding is very, very scarce right now, or any kind of funding, anything other than what these agencies are trying to survive on their current agenda. So if you're, what do they say? You can't take away from Peter to pay Paul and do the same thing. You just can't do it here either. Expecting another agency to fund your program. Just after saying, no, we can't fund it, but let's have another agency fund it for us. That's going to be very difficult, Madam Speaker. And this doesn't mean they can't do it. It just gives them, again, that flexibility so that if they do have the funding source, they can provide it. Some of the things they can provide, Madam Speaker, without any funding source is like information and data that they already have, that they can provide to the Department of Parks and Rec. But what happens if Parks and Rec says, okay, this bill says shall, okay, fire or GVB, I want 13 signs up. I need 13 signs, and I need it up at these beaches and placed up on these beaches, and I need you guys to do it. What if GFD says, I don't have the funding? Well, the bill says you shall do it, so you have to do it. Is that what this legislature is going to do now? Telling another agency, especially in a time like this when we're going to have a difficult time on budget time. Now, if this bill identified any funding at all, then that's a different story. But right now, you're just saying, let's just go take from Peter to pay Paul. And without agriculture here to say anything, and yes, I received a text from Chief Stone, who texts the author of the bill to say they can't fund this program. And without GVB here as well, and GVB is in dire, they receive their funding through the TAF. And we all know what's going to happen there. So, Madam Speaker, this is just simple. It says may. It doesn't stop these agencies to providing any kind of information or what little means they do have to support this program. And that's all it does. So let's be fiscally responsible. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minority Leader. We already closed on the bill. Vice Speaker, do you have a point of information?
I have a point of inquiry, Madam Speaker. If I may proceed with the point of inquiry.
I will recognize you, Vice Speaker. On the point of inquiry, we did close on the amendment. There was an objection. So if you do have a point of inquiry as it relates to this amendment, I will go ahead and entertain it at this time, or a point of information. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm not objecting to the amendment, and I understand that we closed on the amendment, but thank you for entertaining the point of inquiry, because there were two concerns. The first concern is the funding available and the information that we received from the Guam Fire Department Chief Dan Stone via text. And so if perhaps the sponsor of this legislation can just tell us, because it was mentioned that both of our colleagues here received a message from Dan Stone and saying that there's no money to fund this. So maybe if we can know about the funding requirements, and then what is the conversation via text with the chief? Because the concern is we're doing something unprecedented now when we discuss text messages. We have a public hearing, and then we have the committee report, and we ask people to give forth testimony. And so now we're here on session 4, debating on this bill, debating on this amendment, and we're getting text messages at the 11th hour, which is not a very formal process to introduce legislation or to even vote on legislation. So if the sponsor of the bill can just tell us real quick, what is this text messaging that is happening, and what is the funding required?
Madam Speaker, can I take a short recess, please?
I will allow the short recess. I want to acknowledge that I also had conversations with the battalion chief this morning on an Colleagues, we are back from recess. It is about 5 minutes till 12. Because there's several inquiries on question, we will break for lunch and come back at 2 o'clock.